My parents chose my brother's business party over my spinal surgery. They thought I would forgive them like I always had. They thought I would keep funding his dreams, keep sacrificing my life, and keep being the family ATM. What they did not know was that the week they abandoned me in a hospital bed would become the week they lost me forever. My name is Olivia Parker, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough and gave enough, my family would eventually appreciate me. Instead, they treated me like an endless source of money, support, and sacrifice. The accident happened at 5:30 in the morning, while I was driving to work. I was the first person in the office almost every day. My team depended on me, and I took pride in being reliable. Then a drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into my car. When I woke up in the hospital, everything hurt. My back felt like it had been shattered. A nurse explained that I had several fractured vertebrae and a severe spinal injury. I needed surgery the next morning. There was a chance of complications, including permanent damage. The first person to visit me was not my family. It was my boss. He sat beside my bed looking genuinely worried. Then he told me he had called my parents and informed them about the accident. I immediately asked if they were coming. He hesitated before saying they were dealing with something important but planned to come later. I already knew what that meant. My younger brother Ethan. Everything in our family revolved around Ethan, his needs, his dreams, his opportunities. My parents treated him like he was destined to change the world. Meanwhile, I was expected to be responsible, hardworking, and available whenever he needed help. Over the previous 3 years, I had given him nearly $180,000. Every investment, every emergency expense, every business setback somehow became my responsibility. Ethan was preparing for a major launch event for his startup company. I had paid for most of it. The venue, the catering, the marketing materials, the decorations, almost everything came from my bank account. Apparently that launch party was more important than their daughter lying in intensive care with a broken spine. That evening my surgeon explained the risks of the operation. She asked if my family would be present for the discussion. I lied and said yes. The truth was too embarrassing. Hours later my mother finally called. Instead of asking how I felt, she immediately started talking about Ethan's event. She explained that she and my father had driven out of state to help him prepare. Then she asked me to understand that Ethan needed them, understand that this was a huge opportunity, understand that they could not be into places at once. I reminded her that I was having spinal surgery. She told me not to be dramatic. She said I was strong. She said Ethan needed them more. That conversation broke something inside me. The next morning, I went into surgery completely alone. The operation lasted nearly 8 hours. When I woke up, I could not feel my legs. For several terrifying minutes, I thought I was paralyzed. Thankfully the doctors explained it was temporary. The surgery had been successful. I looked around the room hoping to see my parents. Instead I found my boss, co-workers, and friends. My phone contained a single text from my mother. "Thinking of you." That was it. Meanwhile Ethan was posting pictures from his launch party all over social media. My parents appeared in nearly every photo. They were smiling, drinking champagne, and celebrating. I stared at those pictures while lying in a hospital bed trying to learn whether I would walk normally again. The following days only got worse. Physical therapy was painful, recovery was exhausting. Still, my parents did not come. Every phone call somehow turned into another conversation about Ethan's success. Then my mother actually asked if I could send him money for a new blazer he needed for investor meetings. I was speechless. I had just undergone major spinal surgery, and she was asking me for money. Again, I hung up. One of the nurses noticed how devastated I was and sat beside me. After listening to everything, she said something I had never heard before. "What your family is doing is not normal." Those words stayed with me, because deep down I knew she was right. A normal family does not abandon their daughter in the hospital. A normal family does not demand money while she recovers from surgery. A normal family does not choose a party over a life-threatening operation. Then something unexpected happened. The nurse told me an older woman had been visiting the hospital every night. She never came into my room. She simply left gifts and asked how I was doing. Flowers, books, chocolate, handwritten notes. She somehow knew all my favorite things. Finally, on my 4th night in the hospital, I agreed to meet her. When she walked into my room, I immediately noticed the resemblance. The same eyes, the same smile, the same features. Her name was Charlotte, and she was my aunt. Until that moment, I did not even know she existed. Charlotte explained that she was my father's sister. Nearly 20 years earlier, she had confronted my parents about the way they treated me. She accused them of favoring Ethan and damaging our family. Instead of listening, they cut her out of their lives. but she never stopped watching from a distance. She secretly helped pay for my education. She secretly assisted me whenever I faced financial difficulties. She quietly stepped in whenever my parents failed me. I sat there in complete shock. Then I asked the obvious question. Why? Charlotte smiled sadly. Because someone needed to love you the way you deserved. That answer shattered me. I cried harder than I had since the accident. Years of pain, disappointment, and loneliness poured out all at once. Then Charlotte said something that changed my life forever. Your family will keep taking from you until you stop giving. She was right. Every sacrifice I made only encouraged another demand. Every rescue created another crisis. Every dollar became an expectation. Then she revealed one final secret. For years she had been contributing money into a private account she intended to give me someday. When she showed me the balance, I nearly stopped breathing. $240,000. While I had been draining myself to support Ethan, Charlotte had been quietly building a future for me. The next day I was discharged from the hospital. Charlotte took me home. Not my parents, not my brother. Charlotte, she had already prepared a recovery room with everything my doctors recommended. While my family was celebrating Ethan's business, she had been preparing to help me heal. My parents finally returned home days later and were furious that I was staying with her. For the first time in my life, I stopped apologizing. When my mother called demanding more money for Ethan's latest opportunity, I simply said no. There was silence on the line. Then outrage. She accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, cruel. For years those words would have worked. This time they did not. I reminded her that they chose Ethan's launch party over my surgery. I reminded her that they demanded money while I was recovering in a hospital bed. Then I told her I was done. No more loans, no more investments, no more sacrifices, no more being their ATM. I hung up. My hands shook afterward. But for the first time in years, I felt free. Recovery was difficult, but it became the best period of my life. I stopped working endless overtime. I stopped answering every family demand. I stopped funding Ethan's dreams. Instead, I focused on myself. Charlotte encouraged me to rediscover the passions I had abandoned years earlier. I started reading again, then writing. When Ethan eventually called asking for another $15,000, I blocked his number. When my mother sent guilt-filled messages, I blocked her too. When my father accused me of abandoning the family, I changed my phone number entirely. The world did not end. In fact, my life got better. My coworkers supported me. My friends checked on me. The people who truly cared about me expected nothing in return. Months later, I returned to work stronger than ever. I moved into a new apartment. I started therapy. I created boundaries. For the first time in my life, I built a future based on what I wanted instead of what everyone else demanded. Then something incredible happened. I began writing seriously. The stories I created reflected everything I had learned about family, sacrifice, and self-worth. One article went viral online. Thousands of people related to my experience. People who had spent years being used by relatives. People who had finally learned how to say no. I realized I was not alone. My family hated the attention. They accused me of making them look bad. The truth was they made themselves look bad. Years passed. My writing career grew. I published books. I bought a home. Charlotte became one of the most important people in my life. Meanwhile, Ethan's business eventually collapsed. One day he called asking for help again. 3 years earlier, I would have transferred the money immediately. This time I calmly wished him luck and ended the conversation. No guilt, no hesitation, no regret, because I finally understood something important. Helping someone is a choice. Being used is not. My parents never changed. They continued blaming everyone except themselves. They insisted Charlotte had turned me against them. The truth was much simpler. Charlotte showed me what real family looked like. Real family shows up. Real family supports you. Real family does not abandon you when you need them most. Several years after the accident, my father called to tell me my mother was seriously ill. He asked me to come see her. I thought about it carefully. Then I declined. Not because I hated her, because I had finally accepted who she was. The woman who chose a party over her daughter. The woman who demanded money from a hospital bed. The woman who loved what I could provide more than who I actually was. I wished her peace, but I stayed away. After everything, I could live with that decision. Today my life looks nothing like it did before the accident. I write full-time. I own a beautiful home. I have people around me who genuinely care. Charlotte lives nearby, and we still have dinner together every week. Sometimes people ask whether I regret cutting off my family. The answer is simple. I do not miss being treated like an ATM. I do not miss being valued only for what I could give. I do not regret choosing myself. The greatest lesson I learned came from the woman my parents tried to erase from my life. Family is not determined by blood. Family is determined by who shows up. My parents showed up for Ethan's launch party. Charlotte showed up for my surgery. That tells you everything you need to know.